this is it. My final list to conclude out this week with the top 30 best albums I reviewed in 2019. So before you get commenting, oh, why is this album higher on this list? Oh, why is this album not on this list? You gave a positive score to this, blah, blah, blah. Throughout 2019, I have listened to numerous albums, even more than I have reviewed, and most likely an album has either grown on me or dulled on me a little bit. So before you comment that this score is not the same as this score, or blah, 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 I just want you to know that I've had some opinion changes this year, alright? That's normal. This is also my list. If your favorite album doesn't make it to the top 1, then put your favorite album down below. Let everyone know. I have prepared for this day. I've taken a shower for the first time in 3 months. I shaved, can you notice? I've gotten all dressed up. I look all pretty, just kind of like my other videos. And I've also I don't really think I should say that on camera. Alright, so we're going to go through the first half of this list. I will try to talk just pretty quickly about the top 15 albums from 30 to 16, and then dive a little deeper into the top 15 and why they are some of my favorites this year. I've had to do this list over and over and over and over again. I've had many albums to choose from, and I hope you enjoy. I certainly will. This is now a relaxing moment. I could breathe. So let's get started. At number 30, we have old Sea Brigade with this album Ode to a Friend. And at number 29, we have Avenade. Figured out how to say it. It's a whimsical afterlife, one of my favorite post-hardcore albums of this year. At number 28, we have Flying Lotus with his experimental, psychedelic odyssey on his album FLAMAGRA. At 27, we have Solange with When I Get Home, a sequel to her 2016 album A Seat at the Table, a beautiful, elegant, sweet R&B album. At number 26, we have the re-released archived version whatnot of Marvin Gaye's You're the Man. This was supposed to be a follow-up to his 1970 album What's Going On. I like this album even if it's pretty long too. At number 25, we have Tinashe's breakaway from RCA Records on her latest album Songs for You. Another sweet, sensual R&B album on this list. As I was editing this video, I realized I forgot to even say the number 24 spot, and that is Slauson Malone, A Quiet Farewell 2016 through 2018. What a very weird, original, experimental hip-hop album that is really unique. It's such a shame that I completely forgot about it while recording this video, but if I do any justice, it's here. And at number 23, we have American Football's third self-titled album, American Football. I think this is a beautiful coming-of-age record. Details the hardships and the hard life of adulting. Beautiful record, one of my favorites from them. At number 22, we have the trio known as Clipping with their spooky album, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. Great album. Daveed Diggs has never sounded this sharper. One of my personal favorites from them. And at number 21, we have the return after 12 years of studio album silence. The Cinematic Orchestra with To Believe, a great down-tempo new jazz art pop album with great features. A very tight runtime and a very good and consistent set of songs on this album. At number 20, we have 65 Days of Static with their album REPLICR 2019, a great ambient, post-rock, IDM banger. It's not a banger, but it's certainly one of my favorites in their discography. Even if they're going away from their roots, I think this is an interesting approach. I think they made the atmosphere of this album very intense, very visceral as well. I love this thing. At number 19, we have Vanishing Twin with their latest album, The Age of Immunology. This is a great neo-psych album, a kind of dream pop album. It's a pretty lengthy listen, but I think when people let themselves get lost in this album, kind of encompass themselves in this album, that's when it gives you the most. Really interesting dream pop album as well. At number 18, we have Fontaines DC with their debut album, DOGREL. I also figured out how to say that one too. This is a fun, catchy, verbose post-punk album that I really hope Fontaines DC can not only build from this, but make a pretty consistent album next time. I mean, this album is consistent as well. I freaking love this thing. But man, this is incredible, this is catchy, this is infectious. At number 17, we have the boys at Brockhampton being sad on their album Ginger. I have to say this is my personal favorite of theirs. I will admit it's not one of their best, but it's really personal to me. I think a lot of people kind of wrote this off as being a little inconsistent, a little one-dimensional. However, I think a lot of what Brockhampton are doing on this album really relays the emotion that they have felt when they had to kick Amir Van out of the group. It captures a moment in time, in their time, that really wouldn't have been understood by just fans looking from the outside in. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful album, and at number 16, we have Sharon Van Etten with her latest album, Remind Me Tomorrow. A beautiful synth-pop indie rock album, a lot of vocal prowess on this album as well, a very beautiful album too. Okay. And we're at the top 15. The top 15 of this list. I'm very happy with the placement of these. Let's keep going. At number 15, we have an album that is either loved or not so loved. I think why I like this album so much is because prior to me listening to this, I never really had a lot of knowledge about noise rock or how to even approach the genre, and listening to this thing really helped me introduce myself to a lot of great bands in the noise rock genre. I'm talking about the latest album from girl band titled The Talkies. It's great, it's groovy, it's hypnotic at some points, it's very chaotic at others. The vocals are intense, production is amazing, it has this filthiness, it has this dirtiness to it. It's a very good album, and I hope girl band can take what they got on this album and build upon from this. At number 14, we have Lizzo with her breakthrough album, 'Cause I Love You. A fantastic, anthemic album about self-love, empowerment, high self-esteem, bleeds through on the lyrics on this thing, and it's just incredible from front to back, and it's not feeling self-serving, it's not feeling egotistical, it's definitely an anthemic album you can just listen to and play and just, ooh, you're pumped, in a good way, in a Lizzo way. And I told everyone in my review that this will go down in her career as being a pivotal album that pushed her to the mainstream. And I mean, look at her, she has like over 1 million followers on Twitter, and maybe when I made that review she was already popular and she was already on the rise, but still I predicted her fame. I digress. I'm just being silly at this point. At number 13, we have a harrowing release from Lingua Ignota called Caligula. Man, this thing is scary. If I have to compare this album to something, it is a horror movie, a jump scare horror movie that all your friends are talking about, but you're a pussy-ass bitch, and you just don't like horror movies. Ding, ding, ding. And a lot of people are just like, man, it's so good, it's so good, it's so good. So you go watch it. This is the this is the album, really. This is a scary, hour-long adventure that grips you tight and doesn't let go for the entire runtime. The high points contrast so well with the depressive low points on this album. It's so dark, it's demented, it's detrimental. Good album, scary album. I don't recommend this to a lot of people. It does scare away some people on first listen. But yeah, a great album nonetheless. An album that also portrays abuse in this potent, ugly, disgusting fashion that is something that I can look at and say, yeah, that is exactly what abuse absolutely is. At number 12, we have Mike Posner with his album A Real Good Kid, the first album he put out this year. This album has a lot of character to it. I think it shows Mike Posner at his rawest, at his most vulnerable. This is an album about his father's death, about Avicii, a close friend of his death, and a breakup of a relationship, all happening from 2017 to 2018, 2 tumultuous years in Mike Posner's life, and he's just going crazy over these tracks, and it's so potent, it's so personal. You can't help but to kind of feel bad for the guy, and I really do wish him the better of luck. At number 11, I am just as surprised as you are. I did not expect this album to go so high on this list. I keep coming back to this over and over and over again, mainly with one of the lead singles off of this album. It's an incredibly catchy and infectious album that just you can't get it out of your mind. I am talking about the latest album from Echo 2K titled E. Man, the atmospheres on this album are like nothing I've ever felt before. The themes on this album, while I said in my original review that they were about opiate addiction, I can probably say that this as a whole is not so specific. I think just the theme of this album is just feeling like an outcast. And of course that's something I can talk about. That's something I can fuck with on an album. This is for some reason the most intrigued I've ever felt in an album from people in the Sad Boy and the Drain Gang and all of those kind of subcategories in the cloud rap genre today. Again, I don't know what about this album just makes me come back to it over and over and over again. Maybe it's recency bias, I don't know, but this thing is just incredible. It's fun to listen to, a little sad as well, but I think it's something just as a whole you can vibe with. At number 10, breaking our top 10 spot, we have Shu Shu with Girl with Basket of Fruit. This is another harrowing release, but if Caligula was the jump scare movie, this is the psychological thriller that really keeps you on the edge of your seat, but like your eyes are just peeled back, but oh god, it's an incredibly harrowing, dark, demented album and a really potent album in Shu Shu's discography. An album that has seen so many divided opinions. Do I love this thing? Do I hate it? And for the most part, I think this experience, I don't look at this as just an album that I go back to over and over and over again. I look at this album as an experience. If you can watch a movie only one time, I think this is an album that you only listen to one time. It's incredibly dark, it's very depressive, it's a little disgusting at points, it's so just vulgar with its topics and just diving straight into brutal death cases, especially on the song Mary Turner, but I think a lot of what's on this album is just incredibly harrowing. 9 tracks, just about 40 minutes in length, and it's absolutely an experience from front to back. At number 9, a very creative, a very smart, and a very intriguing album that was absolutely underrated this year and underappreciated in my opinion. Kai Whiston with No World As Good As Mine. Kai really hit it out of the park on this album in my opinion. However, I think that he can not only just build from this formula that he has set for himself, but I think he can utilize this in a very smart and creative way for the next time around. Because what's on this album includes elements of experimental rock and post-rock, includes some poetry here and there, but this is, again, mainly an electronic album. But it feels organic, it feels natural. I really love this thing, I really love this album, even if it's a little lengthy of a listen. I definitely would say take your time with it, kind of revisit it every 2 months or something, I don't know. Great album. I really wish a lot of people would talk about this album a little more. I really enjoy it, but I feel like personally this will be looked back on maybe a little fondly. And people were like, oh yeah, he was doing something interesting. Or if he continues down this route, this will be looked back on by saying, hey, you know, that was a great start. I really dug it. Check it out. At number 8, we have JPEGMAFIA. All My Heroes Are Cornballs. Another genre fusion that's not confused. It infuses elements of electronic music, of pop music, of rock music, of rap, of hip-hop. It's a little bit of everything. And JPEGMAFIA pulls really well together these sounds and these styles of these genres, and he puts them fantastically into this album. JPEGMAFIA has been known to do that, but I think he really mastered and honed in his craft specifically on this album. I kind of like how organic it feels, even if it sounds very synthetic. It definitely feels like a JPEGMAFIA project, not only by name, but by sound, by all the colors of instrumentation and production that are laid across every single track on this thing. At some points I would say it's a pretty even beautiful album, and just how it shows and expresses JPEGMAFIA's actual emotions. I really enjoy it, I really dug it. At number 7, I have to put Fly Pan Am with their comeback album, C'est Ça. Now, Fly Pan Am has always been known to be kind of that left-field post-rock band that really, you don't know where they're going to go next. Give it to Fly Pan Am to surprise us with an album release. This is not any form of post-rock. This is more shoegaze than anything. Not only did this surprise me, I really enjoyed a lot of the compositions on this album. I enjoyed a lot of the shoegazy aesthetics that this album has. The washed out crescendos and the loud vocals, but they're kind of washed in the haze of this album. It's a really intriguing album, and I don't think a lot of people can get into this album. I really think it's kind of a weird album to get into, but if you really enjoy this sound, this style of shoegaze mixed in with a little bit of experimental rock, a little bit of post-rock, a little bit of avant-garde music, I think you will enjoy what's on this album. Because Fly Pan Am really made a good comeback, in my opinion. A lot of the tunes on here are a little quirky, are a little psychedelic, a little chaotic as well. And the electronic music that they put into a lot of the songs on here just only add to the atmosphere of this entire album as a whole. Not only that, it's a holistic experience that really intrigued me, reeled me in, grabbed me, and just was like a really fun roller coaster of highs and lows. Again, this isn't gonna be for everyone. It's just like a weird album that I really enjoy. At number 6, we have Wise Blood with Titanic Rising. Very beautiful Baroque pop album that really took the charts this year and won the most accolades amongst critics. And I see why this is a Baroque pop beauty that includes elements of dream pop and art pop into this album. The aquatic themes that are also put into this album are incredible too. The theme throughout most of this album feels like it's not only super consistent, but it's super relevant in a relationship or in just a feeling where you love someone or have like a crush on someone, or even just any type of relationship, period. A lot of what's on this album is also very lush, and I really did enjoy the EP that also came out after this, the Rough Trade Sessions EP. If you watched my video on my top 5 EPs of the year, you would know. But I digress. Not only is this a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Baroque pop album, this is one of Wise Blood's most conceptual and best albums yet. Beautiful, it's mellow, it's not super hard to get into. Recommend this album to you guys. It's really, really good. An improvement on all fronts, in my opinion. Breaking our top 5. Our number 5 is an album from a creator, from a curator, from an artist that really saw the biggest growth this decade, in my opinion. And this album is really the pinnacle of that growth. Not saying that he's just going to go downhill from here. I hope he doesn't. But this is one of my favorites from him, and I would argue one of his best as well. I'm talking about Tyler, the Creator's Igor. This is not only a conceptual album that is about heartbreak, love, lust, angst in a relationship, but this is a beautiful concept album with a low-fidelity recording that is kind of a little muddy, makes this thing feel a little vintage, but for the most part, this incredible album is really Tyler at his peak. He was showing us low fidelity on Cherry Bomb, and he was showing us his songwriting ability on Flower Boy. And I think that while the progression of his work could have never expected this, I think there are bits and pieces you can take away from his older material and add it onto here, but this sounds like nothing he would have made 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It did surprise most all of us, especially with the single Earthquake, and man, I like that track, but I don't think it's one of the best on here. However, how can you even categorize each song as a best and a worst? It's just an incredible album, a beautiful, broken, and powerful album. The little funkiness to this album, the experimentation done on this album, the neo-soul aspect to it, oh, it's just incredible. This album and the person, maybe Tyler himself or just the person in general on this album, is just longing for attention, for love after a tumultuous breakup. And I think really Tyler put together some of his best songs to date, even if they only work in the context of this album. But even at that, there are a lot of songs on here that feel good on their own, and I think that's why it's so high on this list. I gave it an A- initially, but it's number 5. It beat out like 4 A's. I can't count right off the top of my head, but it beat out a lot of them. But this is a great album. I digress. Listen to this thing, Tyler's opus at this point. And if you like Flower Boy, I understand why. I think it definitely shows Tyler, the Creator, at his kind of rootsier a little bit, but being a little more conceptual, being a little more thoughtful. It's passionate. I can definitely tell Tyler put a lot of work and a lot of passion into this, and I'm glad it took number 1 on Billboard, I believe. DJ Khaled, you just mad. You just a hater, dude. You just a hater. Anyway, at number 4, I have to put the hip-hop duo, a great duo. This is their second album. Freddie Gibbs and Madlib, Bandana. I think Bandana shows Freddie Gibbs at his peak because that man can rap. Like, good God. That dude you can give him a beat in any time signature and that dude can just rap over it. And he has bars, he has flow, he has incredible talent, an incredible knack for lyricism. Man, this is just a fun, great, and a moving album from the man, the myth, the legend, Madlib, and his helper, Freddie Gibbs. But I definitely want to say that they do both contribute equally to this album. And I love the jazz influences on this album. I love the gangsta aspect of this album too. Makes me feel like I'm at the scene of a drug deal. I'm white as hell. I don't care, this album is incredible. I really dig it. One of my favorite rap albums of the year. At number 3, the duo, long-awaited duo. They dropped their incredible album this year. An album that I really enjoy. An album that is weird, a little experimental. I'm talking about the collaborative self-titled album from A$AP Rock and Tobacco titled Malibu Ken. This thing is pure fun for total weirdos, and I can definitely fuck with that. I can definitely fuck with that motto. It is an incredibly wonky, weird, off-kilter album that I don't think a lot of people would get into as easily as other albums on this list, but definitely it doesn't take that long to get into. I like this album because it shows that rappers like A$AP Rock can literally rap about anything from Eagles in Pennsylvania to Ricky Casso, which was, again, on the song Ass King, one of my favorite songs of this year. And Tobacco's production on this album is slightly psychedelic. I mean, this is also a very well-produced album too. At 11 tracks and just about 30 minutes in length, the runtime of this album and the track listing is very tight. And not a song on here, I think, skips a beat. It is a quirky album, it is a weird album, it's probably going to be pretty hard to get into if you're just like a base level listener of rap. Not downplaying you, that's fine, I really don't care. But if you want to check out something weird, something interesting, something unique, with a lot of technical ability and good verses and amazing rhyme schemes, you could check out this Malibu Ken album, or just any A$AP Rock album in general. I love the humor that's on this album. I can talk about this album for days, so I'm just going to stop myself and move on to number 2. This is an album, out of all albums on this list, this is the album that I recommend. Bad Books with 3. Now, it has been a while since Bad Books released their last album, 2. That was back in 2012, and since then they kind of honed in their craft on making more of the sadder, more profound indie rock. And for the most part, it worked out in their favor because I freaking love this thing. Not only did the production on this album and the instrumentation on this album keep me interested, the lyrics on here too. Wow, they are really dark, really deep, very profound too. Very poignant set of songs on this album, some of their most poignant set of songs to date. I also think the flow of this album is fantastic too. Each song has a running theme through it that makes it enjoyable, listenable on its own. But it even works better in the context of this record, and I really, really loved a lot of what's on here. I like the shorter songs like UFO and Neighborhood, and even the longer songs on here like the 8-minute track Army keep me reeled in and keep me sitting at the edge of my seat from front to back. This is an album that, again, I recommend out of all these albums. This is the album that I would recommend to you because it's highly underrated, highly underappreciated, very lovely too, very lovely. I really, really, really love this album. It's a fantastic listen, and it's number 2 for that reason. But it's not number 1, because number 1 is an incredible album that took me by surprise when I first heard it, because the lead singles leading up to it were kind of disappointing in all honesty. Let me just cut the crap here. It's FKA TWIGS with Magdalene. On this album, FKA TWIGS took a more subtle and more soft approach to the deconstructed club that she was producing on her first album, LP1. Not only that, she added a concept and a theme that runs throughout this entire album. And her vocal range on a lot of the songs on here is incredible. The higher registers on the song Mary Magdalene and the soft, faint whispers on 1,000 Days. Each of these aspects adds so much to this album as a whole, and it makes this album not only a holistic experience from front to back, it makes every song on here more to sink your teeth into and more rewarding after each time you listen to it. I think Thousand Eyes is a great opener to this album, and I think Cellophane wraps this album up very nicely. Fallen Angel is the hidden banger on this album, and I think Daybed is one of the most sensual songs I've heard this year. Mirror Heart is very poignant, and Sad Day is absolutely breathtaking. And my favorite track on here, Mary Magdalene, I mean, I like a lot of the songs on here, but Mary Magdalene is definitely a highlight. If I could choose one song just to listen to on this album on repeat, it would be Mary Magdalene, because the production, the vocals, everything, it just works so nicely. And I've told you guys in my review that I am not the hugest fan of the Future feature on Holy Terrain. However, I do like the juxtaposition that Future brings to the table in comparison to FKA Twigs. I think they have a weird, clunky chemistry, but it's something that's a little endearing. And I like that Future, of all people, is on an album like this. It's a good album. It's a great album. It's a fantastic album, and listen to it if you are an FKA Twigs fan. You already heard this thing. But I think she returned to the limelight after a 5-year studio album hiatus to deliver one of her best albums and some of her best songs to date. And the themes on this album of a relationship on the rocks or just love in general is impressive too. It's not a new concept, but she does do these concepts faith. I'm really looking forward to whether or not this will be an album that is looked back on very fondly within 5 or 10 years. Because it is a passionate project, it is a somewhat abstract project, but this is something that I think can lead you down the road to more experimental songs and more experimental albums. This is like the tip of the iceberg for this genre of ambient pop and glitch hop, especially art pop as well. I think what FKA Twigs does not only just builds upon a formula that maybe Kate Bush or Bjork set for her, she uses these to her advantage and crafts some very meticulous, very ornately arranged, very beautiful love songs that I think will have the same impact that a Kate Bush album did, or maybe a Bjork album did. And of course a lot of people compare those two. I do see the similarities, but I think FKA Twigs has her own style, has her own voice. Even if she does worship the two goddesses of pop and art pop, listening to this over and over again, I just realize how deep and dense a lot of the songs on here are, the topics on here. Again, not new, but FKA Twigs brings something new to the table on this album here. I really enjoy it. I'm really intrigued. I'm going to stop talking about this album. It is my album of the year. What are your albums of the year? List top 5, top 10, top 100. I don't care. I read the comments. Don't worry. If you say, your favorite album is Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, that's fine. Hey, this is a channel of subjective opinions, not objective facts. I'm not sitting here on top of my soapbox trying to preach the word and be a martyr to good music. I am only here to say my opinion and push at least what I think is good music to an audience, to you guys. There is a, rate your music and album of the year, but let's forget about that. I want to thank you all for this wonderful year it's been. I am going to have another video talking about that, and maybe an honorable mentions video as well. Maybe a video where I talk about 15 albums that I didn't review. I'm not too sure yet. We'll find out and see. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for this entire year as a whole. Through all the ups and downs, I really do appreciate it. This video took a while to make. It took me multiple lists just to try to figure this thing out, and I'm very happy with this list. I hope you are too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thoughts and opinions down below, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.